Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest episode of The Depths of Laughter. I am, of course, Vince Hoover. To my right, your lower and below me is Denise Jackson. Everybody say hi to Denise.
Hello.
Uh, as always, this podcast is a comedy podcast. We want to talk about fun things, jokes, but we also want to explore, the meaning behind jokes, the why behind the joke. And while some jokes literally are just made to be funny, a lot of times comedians are using comedy as a bit of a therapy. But what
Yeah.
happens when that therapy becomes a redundancy?
Yeah.
And so Denise brought something to my attention earlier. She sent me a video. It's from Alice in Chains Unplugged, which, by the way, if you've never seen the Alice in Chains Unplugged, I highly recommend it.
Oh yeah.
I remember growing up and watching it. I wasn't even a fan of Alice in Chains. I didn't like the band at all until I watched it Unplugged, and then saw the emotion behind the music, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually really good."
Yeah, it's one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, Alice in Chains is fantastic. Lane Staley, God rest his soul. Uh, incredible, incredible singer. Jerry Cantrell, guitarist, songwriter, singer.
Yeah.
Um, keeping the band going. By the way, they're still performing to this day, so that's great. But she noticed something in the performance, and I actually got the opposite feeling from that particular performance, but I understood where she was coming from.
Mm.
And this happens a lot with singers, and I think one of the greatest examples you can find these videos all over YouTube is Panic at the Disco. Their first ever single was "I don't, we don't write sins, we write tragedies." Uh, the song about the wedding and the bride cheating. Brendan Urie of Panic at the Disco hates that song now. Absolutely hates it, and you can see all these times where he's on stage and he has to sing it because it's their biggest hit ever.
Yeah.
And he literally in the middle of the song he'll just stop and yell "fuck," like because he hates singing it. He just hates it. And so this song that was their biggest hit that got them on the map is now the bane of his very existence.
Yeah.
And comedians are kind of the same way. And this is a weird example because it's the best example I can give. It's also the absolute worst example I can give, and I'll explain why. Bert Kreischer. Bert Kreischer, very renowned comedian, who got his start, funny enough, from a Vanity Fair article. No, Rolling Stone article. They went to Florida State University to find like the party cities, and the reporter there heard of the urban legend of this guy who had been in college now 7 years and was the party animal. The movie Van Wilder with Ryan Reynolds is based on that article. Bert Kreischer got TV shows with Travel Channel as well as his massive now stand-up career that he has based on that article. But what really made him blow up, that started his career, is his joke about the machine. The machine is the story of when he was one of his many trips in college. They went to Russia, and on the train they were on was also the Russian mafia, and they loved how much he partied, so much so that they took him into the Russian mafia, made him basically an honorary member, and protected him and gave him money and treated him like a god that whole week they were there. So that's the whole story. They called him the machine because the guy he just wouldn't stop drinking. That has defined his entire career. He has to tell that story at the end of every single stand-up thing he does. So wherever he goes, whatever clubs he goes to, wherever he performs, even if it's on like if he's doing a special, when the special's done recording before the audience leaves, they want to hear the machine story. In Bert's case, he loves talking about himself and he loves telling that story. So while it is sort of the bane of his existence that he has to constantly tell the story, he is the exception to the rule in that he actually loves telling the story. I
Yeah.
love Bert to death. He is actually from, the Tampa area where we're from. Comes down here all the time. Somebody I'm trying to get on to the podcast. Love him to death. But there are so many comedians who end up, instead of getting known for a whole special or just their comedic ability, they get known for one joke. And then they have to continue to tell that joke. And again, it's the same in
Mm-hmm.
music. Another great
Mm-hmm.
music example is Living Color, the band that does Cult of Personality. huge song, but the song was so popular they had to put it on every single album they did to sell albums.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
so all you gotta do
That's
is buy,
funny.
you can buy any Living Color album and get that song because it's on every single one of their albums. And again, there's comedians that are the same way. Like they end up like, people go to their shows to hear the one joke, even though it was maybe 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 years ago when they told it.
Yeah.
And so as you tell the story, and again, a lot of these jokes are meant as personal therapy. So
Yeah.
they get the trauma out, they make a joke of it, and they grow from it. But now they have to relive it over
Yeah.
and over
Yep.
and over again.
Yep. Feels like Groundhog Day. I can't imagine how that would feel, like, especially if you didn't think it was going to go over that well and you just came out with that joke just because, it had something to do with what you had going on at the time. So you wrote something and then you have just continue to have to keep doing it over and over again. That's what I was kind of getting at when I watched Down in a Hole by Alice in Chains, watching him do that song. It's like you can totally see that he was just reading the words off of a prompter, and then other the backup,
Jerry Cantrell.
yeah,
Well,
he was singing most of it and
well,
carrying it, and then at the end you saw that he like shifts his whole energy and really gets into it.
yeah. Well, in that particular case, Lane Staley, he was high,
Yeah, I
couldn't
know,
remember the
but
words, and that's what.
yeah.
Same thing with Kurt Cobain. The whole reason that Kurt Cobain had Pat Smear on the Unplugged is because he couldn't remember the chords to all the songs. So that's why you'll see if you watch the Nirvana Unplugged, there's times when looks like he's not playing the guitar, is he? No, he's not, because Pat Smear's doing it and he's just holding it because he can't remember the chords because he was so fucked up. But I get the thought that came to your head and it makes sense. There are many comedians like another great example, and this is a very good, probably the one I should have led with, is Jim Jeffries.
Yeah, yeah.
He, was known for the gun control joke
Mm-hmm.
to the point where like it not only affected his career in comedy where people wanted to hear it all the time, and has since told stories about going to these parties where even like celebrities wanted to hear it and stuff, like the Mariah Carey birthday party
Yeah,
story,
yeah, that was funny.
on Al Pacino and Warren Beatty and people like that. But like he has been brought on to like political commentary shows for it, and like he made up every statistic in that joke. Like it was just a joke. He was making a point, and there was a point behind it, but he didn't do any actual research for it. He didn't, put that much work into it. It was more just like a joke that helped push his point.
Right.
And now it has defined him as a comedian.
Yeah.
And he has tried it. I mean, it again, and he's very thankful. It's led to, his talk show, and it's led to multiple specials and stuff like that. Between that and then the misogyny jokes he did early on,
Mm-hmm.
like it kind of makes it goes from being a comedian's crowd